In our headlines on this Wednesday, August 20th, here in South Korea. The presidential office says its proactive peace efforts are to ensure stability for both Seoul and Pyongyang and not intended to appease anyone. The remarks follow a fresh rebuke by North Korea regarding peace on the Korean peninsula. Meanwhile, 50% US tariffs on steel and aluminium have been expanded to include over 400 additional product types that economists warn may further strain the American supply chain and raise costs for consumers. And today, Arirang TV is hosting President Kim Yo-jong and the director of K-Pop Demon Hunters, Maggie Kang, among others, for a chat on the next chapter of the K-pop industry. South Korea's top office says its peace overtures toward North Korea seek stability for both Seoul and Pyongyang. The clarification follows the regime's latest condemnation of the president's efforts to revive cross-border engagement. Our Moon Hye-ryun reports.
South Korea's presidential office has responded to North Korea's criticism of its efforts to restore inter-Korean trust, stating that the administration's proactive measures for peace are not intended to appease anyone. On Wednesday, the top office emphasized that the government will leave behind the era of hostility and confrontation and open a new era of peaceful coexistence and shared growth on the Korean peninsula. The Ministry of Unification added that mutual respect between the South and the North is essential to building a Korean peninsula peace that benefits people on both sides. North Korea's Kim Yo-jong, the powerful sister of Kim Jong-un, had earlier launched sharp criticism against President Lee, declaring that South Korea cannot be a diplomatic counterpart to Pyongyang. According to the state-run Korean Central News Agency, Kim convened a meeting with senior foreign ministry officials on Tuesday to convey her brother's foreign policy directives. In her remarks, Kim accused the Lee administration of putting on what she called serious efforts to appear interested in improving inter-Korean ties, but claimed Seoul's confrontational intent remains unchanged. She singled out President Lee's recent comment that small acts of goodwill could rebuild trust between the two Koreas, dismissing it as delusion and a pipe dream. Kim further argued that decades of South Korea's rotten political system show that, whether under conservative or liberal governments, Seoul's stance towards the North has not changed. Kim denounced the ongoing Ulti Freedom Shield joint military exercise with the United States as a rehearsal for invasion and highlighted a new operational plan, Plan 5022, which he claimed targets North Korea's nuclear and missile capabilities at an early stage. The plan, signed last year to replace Plan 5015, is designed to prepare the allies for potential conflict on the Korean peninsula, reflecting North Korea's more advanced nuclear and missile threats. Kim's remarks come as Pyongyang prepares to convene its Supreme People's Assembly on September 20th, where economic and legal issues are on the agenda, though the possibility of constitutional changes has not been ruled out. Moon Hye-ryun, Arirang News.
On the international front, the White House has ruled out prospects of US boots on the ground as part of security guarantees for Ukraine, but left open the prospects of support in the air. Our Park Hyo-bin explains.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday, during an interview with Fox News, gave his assurance that U.S. troops will not be on the ground in Ukraine. Later, the White House doubled down on that during a briefing.
The president has definitively stated U.S. boots will not be on the ground in Ukraine.
That statement was in contrast to remarks made the previous day when he appeared to leave the option on the table during the summit with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
There'll be a lot of help. When it comes to security, there's going to be a lot of help. It's going to be good. They are first line of defense because they're there. They're Europe. But we're going to help them out also. We'll be involved.
Still, Washington indicated that air support could be considered as part of any eventual settlement to end the conflict. Trump, speaking to Fox News, said the U.S. is willing to help, especially probably through the air. The White House said that air support remains possible.
It is an option and a possibility. I won't certainly rule out anything as far as military options that the president has at his disposal. I'll let him do that. I can tell you he's definitively ruled out boots on the ground.
In addition, Trump declared that Ukraine's long-standing ambitions of joining NATO and reclaiming Crimea from Russia were impossible. Russia wants Ukraine to withdraw from Donetsk and Luhansk and to recognize Crimea as Russian territory in exchange for a possible troop pullout. Meanwhile, when U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was asked on Fox News about whether Budapest could be a possible city for the three-way talks, as had been reported, he said that it could be the case, but that the bilateral meeting between Zelensky and Putin needed to happen first. Hungary is among the few European countries Putin could visit without the risk of arrest under an international criminal court warrant, given Prime Minister Viktor Orban's close ties with Moscow. Alongside discussions over a potential summit venue, leaders at the Washington talks on Monday revisited the idea of establishing a Korean-style buffer zone protected by multinational troops, according to EU sources. Park Hyubin, Arirang News.
Also in the U.S., as we reported at the start of this week, the Trump administration has indeed expanded its 50% tariffs on steel and aluminium to include over 400 products. Our Ising-jae revisits this trade reality.
The Trump administration has widened its sweeping trade agenda, expanding 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum to cover more goods. According to the U.S. Commerce Department, the new tariffs include 407 new product categories. The new levies, which took effect Monday, now extend beyond raw materials to a broad range of goods, including fire extinguishers, machinery, construction materials, and specialty chemicals. U.S. Commerce Undersecretary Jeffrey Kessler says the move shuts down avenues for circumvention and supports the revitalization of the U.S. steel and aluminum industries. However, the full list of products now facing new tariffs was released with only customs codes used to identify items, leaving companies scrambling to determine which of their goods are included. Trump has leaned heavily on sector-specific tariffs as a key tool of his trade policy. In June, he doubled the steel and aluminum tariffs to 50% for most countries, sparking concerns among U.S. trading partners. Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told CNBC on Tuesday that he expects U.S. tariff revenues to rise sharply, well above his earlier estimate of $300 billion. He said that Washington intends to use the money to pay down federal debt, not to issue rebate checks to Americans. Bessent stressed that the Trump administration is laser-focused on deficit reduction, arguing that the U.S. economy could return to the good, low inflationary growth of the 1990s. However, he noted that higher interest rates are squeezing housing markets and lower-income households burdened by credit card debt, pressing the U.S. Federal Reserve to further rate cuts. Ising-jae, Arirang News.
And on the trade front here, exports of automobiles in July remained resilient, rising over 8% on year, driven by demand in Asia and Europe. Our Park Chunan has the latest numbers.
Automobile exports in July rose 8.8% year-on-year to $5.83 billion, marking 2 consecutive months of growth, according to the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy. Automobile shipments to the European Union and Asia saw a prominent increase, rising 32.7% and 34.6% in value, respectively. Meanwhile, auto exports to the United States, South Korea's largest market, have fallen for 5 straight months following the Trump administration's 25% tariff imposed in April. While seeing a decrease in export value, the decline softened from 16% in June to 4.6% in July, signaling potential stabilization. Overall, the number of automobile exports rose. Over 211,000 vehicles were shipped, marking a 5.8% increase from July 2024. Notably, eco-friendly vehicles, including electric vehicles, hybrids, and plug-in hybrids, saw remarkable increases. EV exports grew 12.3% to 20,200, continuing a rebound that began in June after 16 months of declines. Hybrids surged 18.1% to around 44,000, and plug-in hybrids jumped 31.7% to 4,200, collectively boosting eco-friendly vehicle exports by 17% to over 68,000. Although automobile shipments to the U.S. declined due to the tariffs, the resolution of the auto tariff rate, finalized at 15% on July 30th, has significantly reduced trade uncertainties. The government pledged it would support the industry through financial measures, technological development, and new market exploration to sustain growth momentum. Park Junan, Arirang News.
Earlier on Tuesday, President Kim Yo-jong hosted business leaders at his office as part of summit preparations ahead of his U.S. visit. Our correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
With the summit with U.S. President Donald Trump less than a week away, President Lee Jae-myung hosted business leaders at his office on Tuesday, including Choi Tae-won of SK Group and Lee Jae-yong of Samsung, who will be accompanying him on his trip to Washington.
The meeting was arranged to discuss ways to maximize economic outcomes at the South Korea-U.S. summit and listen to our company's investment and purchase plans in the U.S.
As the president thanked them for their role in recent trade talks with the U.S., he called for the need to work together to turn the crisis into an opportunity amid trade uncertainties to revitalize the economy. The sentiment was echoed by the business leaders.
The business leaders agreed that the upcoming trip should serve as an opportunity to help promote our businesses entering the U.S. market and further raise our industrial competitiveness.
Late last month, a framework trade deal was reached to lower the U.S. reciprocal tariffs on South Korea from 25% to 15% in exchange for investment pledges worth hundreds of billions of dollars, with many details to be worked out in time for the first Trump summit. Areas of cooperation would be centered on chips, batteries, and shipbuilding. Security is also one of the major issues, such as South Korea's defense spending and a possible change to the role and scale of U.S. troops stationed in Korea, as Washington focuses on countering China. President Lee's trip to neighboring Japan will precede his U.S. trip for talks with Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, signaling resumption of the two neighbors' so-called shuttle diplomacy. Against this backdrop, former Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa is likely to be appointed as South Korea's ambassador to the U.S., according to sources familiar with the matter, and former ambassador to Vietnam Lee Hyuk as top envoy to Japan. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
And as we reported yesterday, our station Arirang TV today is hosting a panel discussion that includes President Kim Yo-jong and the director of K-pop Demon Hunters, Maggie Kang, among others, to touch upon the next chapter of the K-pop industry. Our top office correspondent Song Yoo-jin files this report.
The driving force behind South Korea's national strength. That's how President Lee Jae-myung described Korean culture at his latest cabinet meeting on Monday, pointing to the global success of the Netflix hit K-pop Demon Hunters. The movie has become the platform's most watched animated film, while its soundtrack continues to dominate major charts, from the US Billboard to the UK's official chart. Building on that momentum, the president is set to appear on an Arirang TV special program, K-pop The Next Chapter, on Wednesday to discuss the future of the K-pop industry, the backbone of the Korean wave. He will be joined by a star-studded panel. Maggie Kang, writer and director of K-pop Demon Hunters, members Ji-hyo and Jonghyun of the K-pop girl group Twice, music producer RT, and culture critic Kim Young-dae. The presidential office says they'll share ideas on how to further expand K-pop's global reach and explore policy directions to support its growth. This follows the president's call to craft strategies to cement Korea's status as a cultural powerhouse.
관계부처는 지원하되 간섭하지 않는다는 8길이 원칙에 입각해서 K 콘텐츠의 글로벌 확산 전략 수립과 지원, 그리고 K-팝 등 관련 시설 인프라 확충을 포함해서 종합적인 대책을 마련해 주시기를 당부드립니다.
You can catch K-pop The Next Chapter on Arirang this Wednesday at 5 p.m. Korea time. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
And K-pop Demon Hunters is back on top of Netflix's top 10 movies list, having secured 26 million views during the week of August 11th. That is 9 weeks after its debut. In fact, during the week of August 11th to the 17th, this K-pop inspired animation topped the chart in 59 countries, including the US, Canada, Vietnam and Taiwan. Also, as it rakes in more than 20 million views each week, pundits believe this production is looking to stand as the most watched Netflix movie. Now, Red Notice, released in 2021, is currently the most watched film, and K-pop Demon Hunters stands in second place with a total of 230.9 million views. K-pop girl group Twice has set a new record on the US Billboard chart. On Tuesday local time, Billboard announced that the group's extended plays title track, Strategy, ranked 62nd on the Hot 100 chart dated August 23rd, marking Twice's highest placement yet. Released on December 6 last year, the song is also gaining popularity on Spotify's US chart, ranking 38th on the August 17th list. Meanwhile, the original soundtrack of Netflix's animated film K-pop Demon Hunters is also making waves on the Billboard charts. On Tuesday, a total of 8 tracks, including Golden, Your Idol and Soda Pop, entered the Hot 100. And indeed, K-pop Demon Hunters is breaking music charts, creating viral challenges and encouraging greater global interest in broader Korean culture. Our An Sung-jin reports.
Worldwide hit, global musical sensation, potential goldmine. The craze continues for the K-pop Demon Hunters. From being Netflix's most watched animated film of all time to its Billboard-topping original soundtrack, its monstrous success reflects K-pop's growing influence in the mainstream.
The songs are really nice, and I think that it opened more and more people to K-pop. Like, even my mother watched it. And I think that it's a good opportunity for Korea to open up to the world even.
Scenes with iconic K-pop idol light sticks or fan meetings put the spotlight on Korea's unique fan culture as well. But forget about the mere appeal of K-pop aesthetics. The film embeds a subtle but certain authenticity of Korean culture, offering a pathway into the expansion of Korean content for its global viewers.
I think it was, in the beginning of the movie, it was eating the ramyeon and eating the bibimbap. I think in the plane, that was very culture. I really liked it as well. Made me crave to want to eat Korean food. It's like small exposure, but a very good exposure for them to visit Korea.
Members of the girl group Huntrix all perform with their signature 놀이개, often worn with the traditional attire to symbolize good fortune and wealth. Ancient fortresses or Namsan Tower, as well as public bathhouses and Haniwon, or traditional Korean medicine clinics, accurately portray the everyday life beyond the niche elements in the entertainment industry. Food like kimbap and ramyeon, as well as Korean dining customs, highlight the details, and the characters bring life to folk art paintings such as takodo.
Not only is it very well made, but it's the Korean elements that become interesting and refreshing for Western viewers. With their popularity, these films serve as culture ambassadors, often more effective than government campaigns.
What makes Korean content like the animated film so beloved is the fact that it resonates with local authenticity and intertwines tradition, modern K-pop, and everyday elements, making it relatable in and outside of the country. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. We begin in Mexico. President Claudia Sheinbaum denied on Tuesday that Mexico has reached any new agreement with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. The DEA had earlier announced what it called the Portera Project, a major operation aimed at shutting down smuggling routes that move drugs, weapons, and money across the border. But during a press briefing, Sheinbaum stressed that no Mexican security institution has signed such an agreement with the DEA. The president, who has generally been proactive toward strengthening security ties with Washington and cracking down on drug cartels, reacted sharply to what she described as a unilateral statement made without prior consultation. In the DEA statement, its administrator Terry Cole, who was recently appointed to head Washington, D.C.'s police force, said the new initiative will involve planning and operating side by side with Mexican partners while bringing the full weight of the U.S. government to the fight. President Donald Trump announced on Tuesday that the White House is launching a full review of the Smithsonian museums, expressing frustration over what he perceives as an excessive emphasis on the negative aspects of American history. Trump said on social media that the museums overly highlight dark parts of U.S. history, including slavery. He added that he has instructed his attorneys to conduct a review using a process similar to the one he applied to higher education institutions. The museums expected to be affected by the review include the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the National Museum of American History, and the National Museum of Natural History. The Smithsonian has declined to comment on the matter. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has criticized French President Emmanuel Macron's decision to recognize a Palestinian state. Netanyahu said the move fuels anti-Jewish sentiment in France and rewards Hamas. He described the move as strengthening hatred towards Jews and endangering their communities. Macron's office called Netanyahu's claims incorrect and emphasized France's ongoing efforts to combat anti-Semitism. Macron announced in July that France would formally recognize a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly in September. With the third and final Downton Abbey film set to hit theaters this September, fans now have the chance to own a piece of the show's history. Props and costumes from across the series are going up for charity auction. Among the items is the bell wire from the servants' hall, expected to fetch between $6,000 and $9,000. The family car, a 1925 Sunbeam, is estimated to sell for around $40,000. All auction items, including set pieces and costumes, are currently on display in central London for free. Proceeds from the auction will go to Together for Short Lives, a charity supporting children with life-limiting conditions and their families. Yoon Se-young, Arirang News.
It's late August and the heat wave shows no signs of ending, with heat wave warnings issued across the country. There were many places where the daytime temperature rose to around 35 degrees Celsius, with Samcheok and Pohang hitting 36 degrees. For the time being, the heat will continue day and night. In particular, the daytime temperature in Seoul will rise to 33 degrees on Saturday, which is Choseol on the traditional calendar, when the heat is supposed to go away and a cool autumn will begin. Tomorrow morning, Seoul, Daejeon, Gwangju, and Daegu will start off at 25 degrees. Daily highs will go up to 32 degrees in Seoul and Busan, Gyeongju 35 degrees. There will be showers in Gyeonggi-do, northern parts of Gangwon-do, Jeollanam-do, and Gyeongsangnam-do provinces tomorrow. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, during which we touch upon the Korean wave and its momentum as the broader industry seeks to start a new chapter.